Hey guys, Paul here. So, have you guys ever had the situation where you purchase some cards or a card from an online Yu-Gi-Oh seller and then a ban list drops or a new card is announced and the price of what you ordered shoots up and the seller cancels the order and doesn't send it to you? I'm sure you probably have because this happens to plenty of us and it sucks. That's what we're going to talk about today. And the reason I'm talking about it actually is because I hosted my very first Twitter space. Yes, I know. Give me a round of applause. You're very proud. For those who don't know, a Twitter space is basically an audio only chat room where you and I guess up to 10 other people can like talk and then other people can listen in. It's basically just a feature that they stole from Clubhouse, if anybody knows what that is. But yeah, so I did one with a few other content creators over on Twitter. I had like MBT, Cali Effect, a couple other faces in there, head-to-head battles, and like Tombox. And we were just talking about things like this. And so this is one of the topics that came up was like, how do people feel about like what happens when card prices change and orders have been made and like who is or isn't at fault? And the answer, I suppose, could be a little more complicated than you might think. Now, I'll get this, right off the gate, I will say that I tend to be pro consumer, like in many cases, right? Like I think that if I purchased a card from you for $5 and then the price of the card shoots up to $50 overnight because of some ban list or whatever, I still ordered that card for $5 and that transaction's like been made. It's, you can call it a nonverbal contract. I know like contract law gets pretty crazy, but I mean, I think it's also just kind of a goodwill thing and just something that's expected in commerce in general. And it sucks. Like if you get your whole order canceled because the seller, just doesn't want to send it to you because they can sell it for a higher price, that just seems a little bit scummy. It seems a little bit unethical. You'll sometimes hear a lot of different excuses for why this happens, where like a seller might say, oh, well, I ran out of stock and I over sold this and so I don't have any more, which, that's like a fishy excuse because I mean like, is that really the case that conveniently the ban list hit and all that stuff? But just to give a bit of perspective from the other side, just so that we're being a little bit level here. And this is something that a few people in the Twitter space, it's a weird thing to say, a topic that sort of came up or a counterpoint that came up is if you're a vendor or a seller online and a ban list drops at, 2:13 p.m. on a Wednesday afternoon, because that's how ban lists are in Yu-Gi-Oh!, there's rarely any time to, completely update all of your card prices with what you think the new price might be. Prices in Yu-Gi-Oh! Are so fluid and so fast moving, it can change on a dime, and it makes it really tough as a seller to, keep your inventory updated. So if, this one card is $5 and the ban list drops and now everybody's buying it because, it's gonna be good again and now it's like $25. I literally, as a seller, just may not have the time to get to all of my cards and change those prices. Does the seller then in that case still deserve to just lose out on those profits or lose out on those sales? I'm not saying, I'm not taking a hard stance saying that they deserve to get like more money for it or whatever, but it's just something to think about. And it's weird because with card games, like yes, there's plenty of other industries where the prices of something can change pretty drastically on a dime, but with cards, it's a little bit, it's complicated, I guess. Like with Yu-Gi-Oh, for instance, ban lists come out of nowhere, so that's one thing, and something that I don't actually like. Back in the day in Yu-Gi-Oh, ban lists came out, March 1st, September 1st. Call me a Yu-Gi boomer, but those are kind of my favorite days, right? You knew when the ban list was happening. It was very clear, when it's probably a good idea to sell some of these cards, when it's a good idea to maybe pick up a new deck because like the ban list is around the corner. Now we have more of a ban list season. So we have the gist of when the ban list will drop, but there's never really any guarantee that it'll drop at a given time, and you certainly don't know the date. So it could make it a little bit tough for like a person selling cards. In addition to that, card leaks happen very rapidly now. I remember, like 10 years ago, the advent of, just the ability to like know when cards were coming out and exactly what's coming out wasn't really as commonplace as it is now. Nowadays, I mean, you can follow these sites like Yu-Gi-Oh! News, TCG, and all these other places, and like just know like the moment stuff gets revealed from the OCG, what a new archetype is, what's going to be in a new set. And so when that happens, you have to be like ready to just pivot and like purchase things fast. Like, oh, they just announced Sword Soul, I gotta go grab all my Tenyi cards, or grab this obscure thing or that obscure thing, like Draco Berserker of the Tenyi or whatever. And if you act fast and you grab everything within those first, that first half hour or whatever, you might be able to get stuff for a really low price. But then like the buyouts happen, and at that point it starts to become, it's the wild, wild west in terms of, will buyers get scammed? Will sellers get scammed? Like, what's happening here? It's complicated, and it's very volatile. And so I find myself, I used to just be like, okay, well, if buyers, have this issue, then they should almost always be the winner in this sort of debate. But it's gotten a little bit more complicated now because I've made more friends with people who do, sell things, and that's provided that extra perspective. And then also kind of leads me into, I guess, like a similar topic that I probably will make a separate video on this just for more detail. But I do think that nowadays, in this advent of like Yugi-tubers and Market Watch segments and like all these groups and everything that kind of are really eyeing the market and like always on top of it, it's kind of a rough time to be a seller. I mean, it can be a good time to be a seller because you never know what the next card to be bought out is going to be. But at the same time, that volatility makes Yu-Gi-Oh! Really, really rough. And it almost just culminates in this thing where like, I don't envy anybody here. I don't envy the buyers because you can get scammed really quickly. You can, purchase a card like for a certain amount, and then like a reprint gets announced, and then it's like, what? Like I just spent, $200 on this playset of this thing, and then it got announced as a reprint in the next structure deck, or as a seller, like you can just get screwed, and it can all happen in the blink of an eye. I don't really know. As for me, I have not actually had any negative experiences with buying or selling. I've had sellers cancel orders, but it's never been something where like the price shot up. It's just usually been a very genuine, like, we sold an extra copy of this that we didn't have, and it was just a card that was maybe $2, and it's still $2, and they just literally don't have the extra copy. They let me know, they cancel the order, they refund me. I've heard of much worse horror stories from a variety of sellers. I know people like to give flack to these sellers and say like, oh, they're all, it must be with bad intentions. I suppose my takeaway from all of that would just be, it's easy to think that people are maybe trying to scam you or whatever, and maybe there are some, but genuinely, I don't know. I'd like to kind of give people the benefit of the doubt. Maybe like they really did oversell a certain thing. Maybe they really are like trying to be honest about stuff. It's easy to just assume the worst of everybody because that's sort of the world we live in. Everyone must have meant the worst thing by this. They must be out for nothing but your money. I don't know. So yeah, I guess down in the comments, let me know though, what's been your worst or even maybe I guess pleasant or best experience with something like this? Have you ever bought a card and then found out that its price shot up to like 10 times the price? Have you ever bought a card and had that happen but then get your order canceled? What was that like? How did you resolve it? There's no need to, like get super, I guess, like calling out like certain sellers and shops and stuff, but just in general, what's that experience like? And in those situations, do you feel that it's always necessary for the buyer to, be perfectly compensated or be given the card or whatever? So yeah, that's been it. Follow me on Twitter for more Twitter Spaces, I guess, apparently. No, it was fun. Yeah, that'll be it. I'll see you guys in the next one. Best turn.